Welcome everyone to the Fright Corner podcast. I'm your host John, and with me as always is Jeff.
Hello everyone.
And we have a special guest this week from Horror Movie Night is Scott.
Sup y'all?
Glad you could be on here. Looking forward to it. And if you want to, why don't you tell everybody what you guys do over there at your podcast and everything?
All right. Well, I am one of the three hosts of Horror Movie Night. We're a really, really sarcastic, I feel like sarcastic horror movie conversation is really that's our bread and butter right there. We take a questionable horror film that hopefully listeners have seen before, and we kind of eviscerate it, even if we like it. I mean, just recently we did. I'm trying to think. So one that we did that we all liked. Actually, it's hard to find one because the other guys. It's hard for us all to get into consensus. But recently, I picked Phantasm 2, and I love that movie. So I had nothing but good things to say. But Matt and Adam were not on the same page. So, like I said, it's sarcasm and comedy before all else. I mean, if you're coming to Horror Movie Night hoping for in-depth, like every frame a painting type discussion, you're in for a bad time. But yeah, Horror Movie Night is we try to make you laugh more than we try to make you use your brain.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really enjoy listening to your guys' show, and that's why I started listening and I thought, man, these guys are awesome. So I wanted to reach out whenever it was put on Twitter about cross-promoting, and I thought, hey.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to have at least one of you. I mean, usually we try to have one guest because there are 3 guests on our show, and 5, 6 people is just, that's a nightmare. We've never tried it, but I can just imagine how bad it would be if we had like 5 people trying to talk over each other. It's bad enough when on any given week we have no no guest host, and it's just a free-for-all. I've found that, at least for me, I've gotten better at listening and waiting, which is hard for me because I can't see past my own nose sometimes when I think I have a zinger.
Yeah, I understand. We're still kind of new at this. We're getting better as we go. We're kind of looking for each other's cues anyway, but...
How many episodes deep are you guys?
This will make episode 17 or 18 now.
All right on. And do you do? I mean, I didn't pay attention to how often. Are you a weekly, or are you like bi-weekly, or?
We've been trying to go bi-weekly. We've done some weekly, especially in October. We tried doing one each week, but
yeah,
of course, life happens. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's hard to get a week's worth of content every single week. So a lot of times we'll like double up if we can, and then if we're good for a weekend when we don't have to do any work, like it's nice because then you don't have to worry about your extracurriculars as much.
Yeah, because me and Jeff both, of course, we have full-time jobs, and on top of this, so.
Oh yeah. Like all 3 of us are full-time. You know, it's just for the love of horror, which is funny to say because, you know, I've been watching horror movies pretty heavily since I was probably like 11, which can explain a lot about my personality. I'm amazed that I'm so, not socially inept. I guess I'm not like a super charismatic person, but I mean, for as much time as I've sat around and watched people get eviscerated on the screen, I'm pretty well adjusted. But it's weird that I, you know, like after all those years of just being kind of like a passive fan, I'm part of a podcast now, and it's not something that if you would have asked me like, you know, a decade ago, if you would you want to be on a podcast talking about horror movies? Being like, yeah, I guess. I guess it was just I fell into it. It's kind of because I mean I have tons of extracurriculars as well. I mean I'm sure both of you guys know, but I do the music for Horror Movie Night, and that's an outlet because I've written music. I've been a songwriter for a very, very long time. That's another extracurricular, and it's just you find time where you can, but having it be on a schedule is its own set of I don't want to say problems, because it's like I said, it's for the love of it. It's not a chore, but it's definitely, you have to kind of put a little bit more effort into the scheduling.
Oh yeah, definitely. Jeff's the one that kind of got me into podcasting. I've been actually trying to do this one for the last couple of years, trying to figure out where to go with it. And there for a while I was doing it by myself, and I was trying to get people on, couldn't do it, and so I just had to call on my good buddy Jeff there to come on with me to do this. So we got some interaction going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Doing it by yourself with guests is hard. That's actually how Matt started what was originally the Reddit Horror Club, which is where we all met, like, online, and I was I would go on the podcast whenever my pick would come up, like whenever the rotation would come to my turn. And another member of the horror club said, you and Scott, she was talking to Matt, said, you guys have great chemistry. You should have Scott on all the time. And that's where I came in. And then we had Adam come on for a couple discussions, and it clicked, and we had him come on as the third, and then we got pulled into something bigger with Horror Movie Night outside of Reddit, and it was that same kind of thing where you really can't just you can't talk to a wall about, it works for things like lore, I guess, because he's reading off of a script, but if you're kind of deconstructing film, especially horror movies, it's hard not to have someone else's opinion.
Yeah, and that's where I was running into. It's like, I can only say so much. If I had somebody to interact with, it'd probably help a little bit.
Yeah. So do you guys know each other in real life, too?
Yes. We actually met through a mutual friend. And Jeff, you're just about, 30 miles from me? So.
Yeah, something like that. So it was pretty cool. The whole podcasting thing, I started out doing like a paranormal-themed podcast, and I had the same problem, talking to a wall. I can list off the theories and all the scientific studies all day long, but you don't want to drone on and make it super boring either. So the back and forth is always interesting.
So how much do you hate the movie Grave Encounters then?
I've actually not seen that one.
Oh, you're lucky. Man, that movie's garbage. Every teenager is like, fucking love Grave Encounters. No, it's not. It's not good. I just feel like I've never met or even spoken to someone who is a paranormal investigation enthusiast, and I feel like someone who'd seen that movie would have very strong feelings about it, one way or the other. I would hope that they'd think it was shit, but
yeah, I should probably stay away from that then. A lot of the movies that we review, I tend to look at it from that perspective, and so like there's a few that are pretty off, and then occasionally they'll draw from some things that seem legit. So I don't know, it's always tough because again, everything with the paranormal and ghosts is speculative anyway.
Yeah, true, of course. Well, so and I don't want to get off on too big of a tangent before we get into the meat of the MANIAC for movies, but what would you consider like an example of good filmmaking with paranormal investigation in mind?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Too, it depends on if you look at it from like a religious standpoint where, the Catholicism actually knows what they're doing and demons actually exist, or if you're looking at it like, we're just dealing with regular ghosts and demons aren't real. And I don't know. It's really hard to say. I think the first Insidious movie had some good basis in the astral projection and stuff like that. A lot of the people who say that they've done that or encountered that talk about, but it's not true, of course, that you can get lost and like a spirit come back and take over your body. That's not accurate, but that was one that was kind of based in some reality anyway.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned the Catholic angle. I grew up Catholic, and honestly, I never really think about it anymore as far as like when I'm immersed in a trying to be immersed in a ghost story.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like the Exorcism, Emily Rose. That's kind of, I feel like that one was sort of, it took the Catholicism seriously, but I don't know. I mean, I don't really think that most movies are gonna like pander to Catholics, if that makes sense. You know, it's like they're gonna try and cast the widest net, and so movie logic is just gonna be like, okay, whatever gets you to the next scare.
Yeah, no, that is a good one because, like, I think in that one they do send her to some psychologists and stuff like that. Like, there's a whole process that you have to go through before you can actually have an exorcism performed. So that was a good one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and they based that on an actual. If I'm not remembering things wrong, because I really liked that movie when it came out. I think it was 2005 when it came out or something. But I really liked that movie when I saw it in theaters. Then I watched it again, and I still liked it. I thought it was very chilling, but which is a lot for me because I'm so jaded. But I think that if I'm not remembering wrong, that was a supposedly true case of, or one that is highly regarded as a true demonic possession. That they were, I think it was a German girl who actually died while being exorcised. That's correct. That's what's sticking in my head. Okay, good. I'm glad that I'm not remembering stuff that didn't actually happen.
No, I remember that. I think her first was Emily, but they changed the last name. Obviously, I can't remember for sure. But yeah, it definitely was based on true events, or supposedly true events.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that what happened was that I saw the trailer for the film, and I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. And it said something like, based on true events, and I was like, okay. And so I Googled, or I mean, maybe I didn't Google in 2005, but I did some internet research in 2005, looking to see what the original story was. And I think that there are autopsy pictures of the girl, which was pretty disturbing, really. I mean, because you can imagine the stuff that we watch in horror movies being true or having happen in real life, but when you see like actual raw physical proof of something terrible happening to somebody, regardless of if it was supernatural or not, that's just really jarring.
Yeah, it is. That movie was scary as hell. I mean, the other one that really got me, probably because I've also studied a lot of ufology and alien stuff, and so The Fourth Kind really got to me. And when they said that one was based on true events, when I left the theater, I remember like I was looking up in the sky and I like missed my turn going home, and so like I was in this dark area of Colorado Springs and didn't know where it was, and that one got to me as well a little bit. But then I realized that all of that was the supposedly real footage. Obviously, was
all fake. So, yeah, but I think that that's all that matters, though. Is as long as you can suspend your disbelief. I mean, that's what found footage is supposed to be. Is if you can suspend your disbelief for long enough to see the movie before the shit gets debunked, then you're like, oh, okay, that's really scary, and you get that lasting impression. Like, I think that I knew in my heart that the original Blair Witch was fake, but that also came out in 99. The internet was not like it is nowadays, and I was in high school. And so I feel like I was able to get immersed in that story. I mean, I knew at the end of the day that there was no logical way that they would go through all this trouble and they would like film themselves doing stuff that nobody would normally film themselves doing just so they would feed the story. And then somehow they all die and then someone somehow finds the tape. I mean, but it was flimsy enough, like the reality of it was thin enough that I could enjoy myself as far as like found footage goes. I mean, if you guys have listened to pretty much any, as long as you've listened to 2 episodes of Horror Movie Night, I'm sure that at least at one point or another in one of those episodes, I've been like shitting all over found footage because I think that it's the laziest horror writing that there is, because you don't have to write a script. You just have to have people that'll swear at the camera.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I remember when you brought up the Blair Witch. I remember I was in high school when it came out, and I remember, of course, they made the big hype that it was real, and there was always specials on TV about it, and everything else, and then they hyped it up, and then I went and watched it, and I remember when I came home, I was kind of, thought, well, that's kind of neat, and then my rational mind thought, why would they let them put the film of somebody's death on the big screen?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
all right. So I guess let's go ahead and dive in here. We're
Yeah.
doing Maniac from 1980, and of course the remake from 2012. So Maniac, I was looking around, and I seen that this movie had a lot of controversy when it first came out in theaters. They were not happy about that. A lot of feminists thought this was misogynistic. This was violence toward women, which yeah, it was. But he
I
also
think
killed
that's the
some people
point,
too.
though.
Yeah, I mean, he also killed men in here too. So
Well, the thing is that he killed the men as a way to get to the women.
yeah,
I mean, I think I get it, but really, from what I understand of the 1980 version, the biggest uproar was because of video nasties. I think they were starting around that time. I think 80, 81 was when the video nasty started in all that censorship in the UK. But I think a lot of it had to do with Tom Savini's makeup and special effects, because you think about this coming out, I don't know, is it a year after, 2 years after Halloween?
yeah,
And, I mean, it is just next level as far as kills.
hmm yeah, it is, and very graphic. Of course, this will be spoiler filled. I mean, people have had warning about
If you
it.
haven't if you haven't watched Maniac 1980 by now, it's okay. We can spoil it for you.
Yeah, but the shotgun blast.
Yep, the shotgun
That's
is the one that I was thinking about too.
Yeah, I mean that thing was awesome. And I watched an interview with Savini, and he said he liked it, but he thought they would be a faster shot of it, and it wouldn't be slowed down. But they say he
I
was
guess the
happy
slowing
with
it down. Yeah, I think that the slowing it down probably made it seem less realistic. But yeah, I would love to see a fast, like a I don't know what you would consider that, like a real time
Yeah.
version of that. Like if somebody could speed up just that section, because I bet that looks way more convincing.
Oh yeah, I bet so. I mean, I remember, like I said, I was watching that interview with him. He said he already had the cast of his head made for some other movie. He said, let's just, and then he went to the food table and stuffed it with like shrimp sauce and apples, whatever he could cram it with, and they shot
Yeah,
it. And of course, they didn't have a lot of permits to film this movie, so this was
yeah.
like guerrilla filmmaking. They said it's illegal to shoot a gun in New York. He hopped up there, and of course, he done the effect himself. He shot it. In other words, he killed himself in the movie. He,
I love the Tom. I love the Tom Savini was like, I just really want to make out with this blonde chick. I'll toss myself in this scene.
yeah. Well, he said he hopped up there, and he said they shot. And they had 5 cameras around there. They filmed it. He shot. He said he wasn't expecting. He fell off the car after he shot the gun. He said, but they had about a minute. They had to pack up, tow the car, and they got out of there because they had no permit to do that at all. So,
Wow.
it was like, yeah. So he said at the time he was like a 5-year prison sentence and some
Wow.
ungodly amount of fines. So we just did that and took off. And like the subway scene, supposed to be alone in the subway when he's chasing her, and it's apparent there are people in the subway on the platform.
They're all over. Yeah, but they're like, what the hell is going on right now? But then again, it was New York, 1980. Well, probably 1979 when they were filming.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you're talking about how they didn't have permits and that it was guerrilla filmmaking, because we talked about the exact same thing when we discussed Basket Case on Horror Movie Night a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's way more obvious in that than it is in Maniac. For whatever reason, this movie just holds up way better. They must have had more money, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think they spent like $350,000 on this movie to make it. And, I mean, heck, but for all that goes, they spent $350 on it, and I'm trying to pull it up here. Yeah, they made the box office. They made $10 million on this movie.
Holy crap! Wow.
And I guarantee you what helped them was the fact of all that panic and stuff that, they could claim that this is the movie that the LA Times didn't run ads for and all that. So, and they were getting news. This was free publicity. That probably amped up the ticket sales on it too. So.
Yeah, that was like internet viral marketing before the internet.
Yeah, I remember watching the clip there. This lady didn't like the billboard, so she went out there with a can of paint and painted over the poster on the side of the billboard. Oh,
Wow.
it's bad. I mean, I don't know, but for all of it that is, I didn't think it was too bad. Jeff, why don't you chime in a little bit here? What did you think of this one?
Yeah, no, I could understand how the women were so upset about the violence toward them, but I'm just surprised that that was all the controversy. It wasn't like the gory scenes or anything like that, really. Especially the final scene when like the mannequins come to life, in his fantasy or whatever, and rip him apart. Like that was one of the worst things I've ever seen on film, probably even to this day. So it was pretty brutal. I mean, obviously they didn't recreate that exactly in the new movie. It was a little bit different, but in the original, like, and he's not an attractive man to begin with anyway, so like when he's getting torn apart and bloodied up even further, it was quite a shocker. So yeah, it's one of those movies that'll stick with you, that's for sure.
Yeah, and full disclosure, this is that was my first watch of this film. I just never got around to watching it. I watched the Maniac remake as soon as it came out, and I was like, wow, this movie is amazing. This is like one of the best horror movies that's come out like in this millennium. But I just never watched Maniac 1980. I couldn't find a copy, and ironically, now there is an uncut copy of it, like an uncensored, edited copy of it on YouTube of all places that I watched it.
That's where I watched it at, was on YouTube.
I love that. I mean, that's what YouTube's really supposed to be about, is finding obscure movies that you wouldn't be able to get your hands on otherwise because they're out of print or, they're VHS only. There's tons of crazy stuff like that there's all sorts of, like, doors have been opened for people our age all over the place on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing...
Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Well, one other interesting thing that I had heard was that Joe Spinell, who played Frank the Maniac, he actually helped to write this movie. And I think he might have been executive producer on it as well. So he was really invested in it.
Well, I did not know that, but it absolutely shows in his performance, because that's another thing that keeps this movie, I don't know, fresh maybe, but the thing that keeps this movie compelling, even watching it, all these years later, and Joe Spinell is long gone, but he really sells that part, which we can get into the comparison or the contrast between his performance and Elijah Wood's performance, because they're very, very similar, yet they have kind of like different personality types that they bring to the table. But yeah, really, really impressive.
Yeah, and I think when you see Joe Spinell playing Frank Zito, I mean, you can almost, it's like, he's got greasy black hair, he's sweating, it's just like he has that image. When you think of Maniac, I mean, I think of him as Maniac. I mean, he is that character.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But that's the kind of cool thing, is that they chose someone else to be, like, they chose an entirely different personality type and body type for the remake. I mean, because Elijah Wood is creepy in an entirely different way. Yeah. And I feel like it's a modernization, which is very cool. Like, I didn't understand the reasoning until watching the original, that why they did a lot of the things that they did in the remake. It's like Elijah Wood could not have been more perfect. Like, I thought he was perfect the first time I watched it, but when I watched it, after watching Maniac 1980, I was like, this is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this, I by far, it's got its problems too. I mean, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but when you see it, it's like, it's kind of something unique, and, of course, that ending there, whenever he has hallucination, and technically kills himself, and he opens his eyes, you knew they wanted a sequel. Pretty bad. And I heard that there was... Yeah. I think I'm going to look on YouTube and see if I can find it, but there was like a little short they did for a promotion to get a Maniac 2 called, it was like Maniac 2 Robbie or something, and Joe Spinell had filmed it with William Lustig, and they're trying to get the financing, I guess they couldn't, and then like 2 or 3 years later Joe Spinell died, and then it just kind of went away after that.
It's probably for the best, really.
Yeah.
Well, Was the second movie, did it look like it was going to focus on Frank still or somebody else?
Somebody
Robbie?
else. It was supposed to be somebody that hosts a children's television program, and he kills the parents of abused children.
Oh, weird.
I mean, it's like, okay, you're kind of getting away from what the first one was. Of course, it's also implied that his mother was abusive to him, because he's looking at the scars, cigarette burns and cuts and stuff. So, so it's like each time, he's killing these women, it kind of makes me think he's killing his mother each time.
Yeah, well, and I feel like that was kind of implied in the original, but really fleshed out in the remake, and I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, I do too.
I mean, because I like subtlety. I really like subtlety because it's a very rare thing in horror movies. But I think that it was a little too oblique in the original Maniac, and so when they kind of show why he is the way he is, or at least why Elijah Wood is the way he is in the remake, I'm glad that they spent that time to do some exposition because it makes him more tragic. Because and I guess you could argue one way or the other that he shouldn't be kind of like a pathetic character. He should be just completely shunned because he's a maniac. But I don't know. Again, they updated it for a completely different culture that would be watching it now. Because like in the 80s, or in the very early 80s, 1980 when this came out, the original came out, I feel like the whole point was preying on the fear of anonymity in a city and the fact that anybody could be a murderer. Like, he just seems like this regular guy who's, he's going out to dinner and buying presents for this female photographer that he has like a working / slightly possibly romantic relationship with, and at night he's killing prostitutes and people that he finds in the street. Like, I understand that was what was scarier then, but now I feel like it's so much scarier for him to be like this socially awkward dude that just can't quite get himself together, because it's more like if 1980 audiences were watching this to feel existential fear, 2012 audiences were watching the remake and their skin crawls because they can see themselves in Elijah Wood. Like, I mean, a lot of horror movie enthusiasts like us probably have had, at least at some point or another, trouble with women, or trying to talk to someone, something like that. And so it's supposed to make you feel unnerved because it's like, oh man, how close am I to snapping?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, especially like officially moving on to the new version now with Elijah Wood, exactly what you're saying, like with the online dating thing. I mean, that's perfectly transitioned to update to the times. And like one really funny callback that I had noticed is when he goes out on the date with the one lady, I can't remember her name, but she had the curly reddish hair, and she talks about how she was surprised that he actually looked like he did in the pictures that he sent, and that she expected him to be like a acne, pot-marked,
Yep.
overweight, sweaty dude, talking about
with long, black, greasy hair.
Yeah.
The remake has tons of callbacks, and I really appreciate those because they're not bludgeoning you with like, hey, we're a remake. It's just kind of like a really nice, because I didn't get them the first time I watched it, because I'd never seen the original. Right. So it was very cool because they did some shot-for-shot homages to like where the blood falls down drips down the screen, which they had done in the original as well. They're very, very cool things. It showed how much love went into that remake, and I've said it on my podcast more than once. I say it pretty much anytime a remake is mentioned. You can tell when they're authentic and when there's like love behind the camera for the source material.
Oh yeah,
and it's very obvious in this film that, or in the 2012 film, that there was a lot of respect for the original.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I did like what they did with this remake is, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to express this. The music, I guess. I'm not a dubstep fan or anything like that, but I think the music in the remake fits it perfectly for that type of feeling. And I think that really amplifies the movie quite a bit.
Well, I agree. I would probably need to like really sit down with the original soundtrack and the remake soundtrack and see if there are some actual legitimate callbacks to some melody lines. But I would consider the remake soundtrack not dubstep, but rather like synthwave.
Okay.
And synthwave is trying to sound like 80s synth pop. So I mean, it was a perfect time to remake the film because the music doesn't sound out of place, just like in the original. The music doesn't sound out of place. I listen to horror movie soundtracks an ungodly amount of the time. I love soundtracks, and I really respect the way that they handled the music in the remake because it feels like it fits just like it did in the original. It's creepy, but it's not like bash you over the head with ominous sounds, like there aren't, and it's also a nice thing about the original Maniac is that there aren't a whole lot of jump scares. There's a feeling of creeping dread because all these women are going to get mutilated, but it's not like there's no gotchas, which is great. It's very refreshing.
Yeah.
And I think the other big thing to talk about briefly would be like the first-person aspect of the new film, because I mean, pretty much the entire thing is first-person. I think there might have been a couple times where it was kind of weird. It was like a third-person view, just thrown in there for a couple seconds. But overall, like it really puts you in the shoes of the killer, and not many movies have actually done that.
I think that they were genius with the way that they did it, and they also bring you out of it a couple times by showing him in a mirror. I think that's what you're remembering is like if he sees himself in the mirror. Or I think that you might see him in third person in memories. I can't quite remember what those spots are.
What?
There was a kill when he's hiding underneath the car and he gets that gal.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And then they step back and he's stabbing her and stuff. And of course they recreate the poster image in the car, so from the original movie. But
yeah.
But they kind of step back there, and it seems like maybe a couple of others, like when he was remembering the past of his mom. Doing lines of coke and getting double teamed or whatever, but
that's a chivalrous way of putting it.
Yeah.
Lines of coke. Say, just hide in the closet. And it's like your kid's in there because you tell you, oh shit. It's like, no, what the fuck are you doing?
Just watch and learn something, boy.
Yeah, I don't think that it was truly for her benefit or her son's benefit. I think it was for the John's benefit.
Probably. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. It's like, but he also, when he's going after that Rita later in the movie, his love interest friend or whatever, he's sitting there talking to her like she's his mom, like, why'd you do this? Was it for the money? Was it for this? It's like he's projecting it onto her.
Yeah, well, they needed to really show that he's insane in the remake because he's a little bit less obviously unhinged a lot of the time than the original. I don't know, like they had that whole scene where in the original where Frank is like he has this whole speech to one of the mannequins in his bed, and I feel like they had to bring that psychosis into the remake, or else it would be harder to sell the fact that he's truly unhinged and is not really in control ever. It's just kind of a flip of the dice who he's going to kill.
Yeah.
Because he tries to stop himself, but he never can.
No.
Yeah, and when you talk about almost like people seeing themselves in this situation or being relatable, it kind of was in a couple points, especially like I found myself at one point rooting for him to like get the love interest and get with the photographer in the new one. I mean, and not in the old one. I don't think I related to that guy at all.
No, nobody relates to Frank
No.
in the original.
Yeah. But in the new one, yeah, I found myself kind of rooting for him a little bit, but then I was like, oh, wait, this guy's a maniac. So, yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that also in the remake. They stuck with a lot of practical effects, and they used some CGI to do a few things, but it wasn't in your face all the time. I really think that the practical effect aspect, because I'm a huge practical effect fan, because I hate when they over CGI stuff. It just bothers me. But I think in this one, I really enjoyed it because, I mean, the blood looked good, and they had some, I think some good effects on it done, too.
Absolutely. I can remember watching the remake for the first time right when it came out on video, and I was like, that first kill where he stabs her through from below her chin up through her skull, I was like, damn it, that looks so fake and it's totally unrealistic, and that it took me a minute to get back into it because it really took me out of the film, because I was like, I had low expectations going in. I was like, oh, this looks like it's going to be cool and stylish. I heard that it was all in first person, and then that comes in, I'm like, man, that looks like garbage. But aside from that, that's all I was going to say, is that like it just, that one really looks so obviously fake, and then everything else is so well done. I don't know why they went with that. It's just odd.
It totally reminded me of one of those Walking Dead type kills, when they stab the knife into the walker's skull or whatever. I mean, it totally felt like that sometimes. When you can see like the blood and the edge of the knife is CG.
Yeah, well, like I think that her whole face was CG in that. I mean, it's just like, it just seems so out of place. I feel like somebody that was in charge, somebody that gave money was like, we need a straight close up of a girl getting head. And they were just like, make it work. So I think that's where it came from. I mean, it's just not going to happen that way. It's not penetrate the top of the skull, not with a hunting knife. If we're doing the thing that we're not supposed to do, where we think too hard about a horror movie.
Yeah. I mean, I understand you guys suspend some disbelief and everything, but in that case, it was pretty apparent that one was CGI. But it's like, okay, and I was the same way. It's like, oh man, this is all going to be CGI. That he's going to do everything, and it's not going to look good. And then they pulled me back in with the next kill. It's like, hey, this looks a lot better.
Yeah. I've watched the scene more than I've watched the movie. Like I've rewatched the scene where he's on the bed looking at the mirrors on the ceiling. I just want to know how they did that scene. That scene is so good and so smooth, and I just can't wrap my brain around where the camera was and how they did it.
Yeah, I wondered about that too.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but they pulled it off really well, and I was impressed by that. And one thing I did notice in this one, though, he's killing them mostly with, of course, he chokes one of them out, but he's used a knife the most of the time. Whenever in the original, he used a knife a couple of times, but a lot of times it was either a shotgun or, a different implement that he was using to kill him. But in this one, it seems like they took that poster, you see that Bowie knife, and it's like, well, in the remake, he's using the Bowie knife.
Well, his personality in the remake would not really lead to him having a gun, much less premeditation to buy shells and then the audacity to go shoot someone in New York City. I think that is a very, very smart way of them to subtly modernize the film, because, I like the shotgun kill because it's in the original, because it's really over-the-top Tom Savini. Yeah. It's great. It's visually stunning, especially for the time and the budget that they had. But the remake was better off not having any guns in it. Guns aren't scary. Guns are real. Like, you want to watch horror movies to escape from reality. At least for me. It's an escape from reality. And so you don't want to see people getting shot by guns, because that's so, I hate to say it, but it's like mundane. It's like, why would a serial killer do something so humdrum every day? Yeah, like where's the hatred and the anger in killing someone with a gun? If you kill someone with a knife or you choke someone to death and you are like feeling their life drain from their body, I don't have a fantasy of doing any of those things, but I want to watch a killer whose fantasy it is because that's scary. Somebody who's just going to go up and shoot someone in the face, it's just too real because that shit happens every day all over America. So, I don't want to watch a movie about that.
No, and I think, like you said, the anger and stuff, and I think anytime that they pull back and you see him kill, like when he's choking that gal out at the beginning, you can just see the hate and anger in his face, and then when he's stabbing the one on the ground, you can just see it that he's just, it's more personal.
Yeah, and that kill in the parking lot or impound lot or whatever it is, where he's stabbing the crap out of her, and then he scalps her and stands, and you can see the original iconic poster image. That is the most stomach churning of all the kills in the remake. Actually, it's the most stomach churning in both films, and definitely the one that sticks with me the most. It's just so real. Like if we're talking about what is a chilling and horrifying death scene, like that super realistic stabbing is very haunting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the same for me. And going back real quick, just a side note, I've been thinking about that for a few minutes about the mirror scene and how they didn't show the camera. I think what they did was they filmed him on the bed and then put some green screen up in the mirror above him, and so they filmed it below and put that image of himself on the green screen. So I think that might be the trick of how they did that.
Yeah, well, I guess that's logically what I thought too, and that they did some creative editing to make it look like he could see himself, but it's the part where he's like looking up at himself and then the girl doing stuff to him. I guess that it would make sense if they're doing it from the ceiling down, but just this perspective really kind of twists your head and it doesn't really make sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree with the girl being in it.
Yeah, I would love it if the Blu-ray. I don't have a Blu-ray player. Spoiler alert. But if there was like maybe iTunes exclusive behind-the-scenes content or Blu-ray exclusive content that talks about how they made the first person work for all those different scenes, I would love it.
Heck yeah!
That just would be. It would be great to get the insider's scoop on that because that's the kind of stuff that I'm no screenwriter and I would never want to direct a film myself, but I am pretty fascinated by people that can do it in creative ways after, what are we on, 110 years of cinema now?
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, all in all, for this being a remake, because remakes, a lot of times will flop because they're cashing in for the name only. But I think this one by far ranks up there with like the John Carpenter's The Thing remake or Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. Personally, I would put it at the same level as The Thing and The Fly. Mm-hmm. But I know that some people would not because they hold stuff from the 80s in higher regard than something that's only 4 years old. But, as far as rewatch value, I would rewatch this over The Fly any day. I wouldn't necessarily watch over The Thing because The Thing is a little bit more over the top and it's more fantasy, so I feel like it's something I could passively watch. But, ultra, like the highest level of kudos that I could give to a film goes to the Maniac remake because, as I said, it's probably my favorite film that's come out since 2000. It's might be my favorite film that's come out since Scream. And then before that, nothing until we go back to the 80s stuff. But, it is, I was delighted that when you sent Horror Movie Night an email saying that it would be the original and the remake of Maniac, and Adam was like, "Hey, you want to grab this one because I grabbed this last crossover podcast." I said, "Sure, I'll take it." And then I found out that it was going to be the Maniac movie, so I was like, "This is perfect," because I know that on Horror Movie Night I could never pick Maniac 2012 or 1980 and be able to just be effusive about it because that's not how our show works. So I was just very happy that there would be an opportunity for me to just go all out and be like super positive about Maniac 2012 in particular.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have much else to say about it. I mean, I think this is, these movies are worth watching, and I think the 2012 one does kick it up a notch from the 1980. I mean, I'd recommend it for anybody to watch it because it is a great modern-day slasher movie for what we have.
Which is hard, and it's hard to make those now because just I think that well has dried up.
Yep.
I mean, what other slasher films have come out in the last 5 years?
Yeah, there's not any. I mean, when you think about it, there's nothing that stands out like this.
I mean, I guess you could consider The Collector to be a slasher killer, but I feel like he's more like a trap killer, and so he's more along the lines of like the Saw films. I mean, I guess that makes sense because it's the same production team, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, who else is there? Aside from C-grade, terrible like Killjoy and all that crap.
Was it? Shoot, I just had it. Yeah, it was like the Chrome Skull, and I cannot think. Laid to Rest.
Oh, yeah.
Those Laid to Rest movies, they were kind of slashers, but they were kind of over the top and just way out of proportion for what could be portrayed as reality.
I think that the only one that kind of comes to mind at all, and it's questionable whether you consider him a slasher killer, but Mick Taylor in Wolf Creek 2 is about as close to like a Freddy Krueger-esque personality that we could possibly get a franchise out of. I have not watched the original Wolf Creek because maybe I did actually. I can't. That's how bad it is. I can't even remember if I watched it or not. But Wolf Creek 2 really surprised me. Somebody picked it when we were doing Reddit Horror Club, and I was like cursing their name as I turned it on. And about 10 minutes in, I'm like, okay, you win. It's great. But I mean, he has that personality. I just don't know if he would consider him a slasher killer because he's kind of more about traps and I mean
torture and.
But people consider Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be a slasher franchise. So I guess you would probably consider Wolf Creek to be a slasher franchise.
Yeah, yes, we could probably do that. I mean, but I don't think it's a superior slasher. I mean,
Oh, no, not even close to what they did in Maniac 2012. I'm just saying...
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to rack my brain for anybody else that is even close to being I don't want to say believable, but like a memorable character. I mean, we have Behind the Mask. We have Leslie Vernon from Behind the Mask, but I feel like that's so meta and pastiche that doesn't even count as like a slasher killer because he's more a conversation about what slasher killers are about. So, I mean, I also wouldn't consider the ghost killer in the Scream movies to be one cohesive slasher killer. So I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, the killer in the Scream franchise is the best thing we've had since the 80s, which, I mean, I love Scream. I can't say much for Scream 2 and 3, but Scream and Scream 4 are fantastic. And but I just wouldn't say they don't come to mind when I think like, okay, what's a great slasher killer? Because they had different motivations.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Jeff, you got anything else to add, or?
Nope, I think we just about covered everything.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. And Scott, I will apologize. I was probably the one that suggested the Maniac Cop movie when you guys done that one, because I remember seeing that as younger.
Son of a bitch!
I was like, I seen that I was younger. I thought, hey, I think that was a pretty good one. I'll suggest that one. And then I watched it after I did that, and I was like, fuck what I do. I said, I thought this thing was more gory than what I thought it was. And I was like, this is bad. I'm sorry. It's like, God.
You don't have to apologize for anything. We got a great episode out of it because we were raging so hard about how mediocre the film was. That's the thing, though, is that it's hard. It's really hard to pick for our podcast. Like, I'm actually batting 1,000 as far as, like, getting good episodes because I am like, oh, I love this movie. Maybe we can get a good episode out of it. And then it's like me trying to argue the guys to my point of view. So really, when you pick something that's not great, but that kind of sticks out as like a hidden gem from your childhood, it's a lot funnier that way. So, you know, like, I hate you for making me watch Maniac Cop.
Yeah.
But I forgive you because we got a good episode out of it. But that movie is mediocre as hell.
I mean, I sat there. I remember seeing it. I was younger. I mean, I'm getting ready to turn 34. So I remember seeing it on HBO when I was younger, and I thought, yeah, that'd be one. And then I revisited after I sent that in, and I was like, shit, this ain't gonna be good. I said, this is horrible. I said, there's no story. Is he supposed to be alive or dead? Is he supposed to be this? Supposed to be that? And it's like, he's superhuman. It's like, this is not good.
Now, well, I mean, it's fun to poke fun at, and it's also fun to, I mean, there has been a recurring theme that just seems to be cropping up a lot with 1980s New York City. It was a huge fixture in a lot of great horror movies. I don't have a problem with talking trash about Maniac Cop. Now, if you decide to write in and suggest Maniac Cop 2, you might be dead to me. Because I really don't want to rewatch that. The funniest thing about Maniac Cop is that it took me a long, long while to realize that was Bruce Campbell in it. Because I didn't read up on it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that he was in it. And so I'm watching, I'm like, that sounds like, is that Bruce Campbell? And then I'm like looking at it, I'm like, that can't be Bruce Campbell because I would know if he was in this piece of garbage. And so I had to IMDb it while he's having his argument with his wife before he goes out to bang his side piece or whatever. And I'm like, wow. So that was actually the second time that I had like a surprise Bruce Campbell moment for Horror Movie Night because we did Waxwork 2. I think it's been about a year now, maybe a year and a half. When we did that. It was early on when we first started doing it. And, man, I love Waxwork. It is one of my favorite horror movies. Waxwork 2, not so much. The best part about it is absolutely Bruce Campbell's cameo.
Yeah, it is. All right. I guess we'll wrap it up here. Once again, Scott, you want to drop where they can find you guys at?
It would be my pleasure. I mean, it's not like I didn't talk about Horror Movie Night for the last 50 minutes. But yeah, we're on iTunes. We're on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Horror Movie Night, and we're on Twitter, HMN Podcast. That's our @. And as I said, Adam runs the Horror Movie Night Twitter. You can follow my fake Twitter, which is Fucking Duke, which is a Spookies reference.
Yes.
That's FAHKINDUKE, because obviously he wouldn't speak Midwestern English. He would be speaking New York City 1980s English. So that's where you can find us, and we have a group on Facebook that is pretty hopping. We seem to have a lot of people that like to talk about their own personal experiences in horror and their daily grind as far as getting through some pretty bad horror movies. So that's all good stuff. And I can recommend not watching one film to you guys. How's that? Don't watch The Hollow. It's on Netflix. And I was super sick this past week, middle of the week, a couple days ago. I could barely get up off the couch, and I was just not lucid. And I had The Hollow on my watch queue for 6 months or something, just based on the cover, because it had like this sweet. It was like a. It's hard to explain. It's like all these vines that look like a monster with a mouth made of fire, which I was like, oh, that looks like a sweet monster. And so I watched the whole thing, and it is one of the most incomprehensible films of the last 5 years, easily. I mean, it makes Maniac Cop look like Shakespeare. It's so bad. So do not watch. Do not watch. Unless you actually, I mean, it's like one of those so bad that you can't help but laugh kind of movies. So if you're super sick with the stomach flu and you need to think about anything else, watch The Hollow. Otherwise, if you're in good spirits and good health, watch anything else.
All right. Okay, Jeff, why don't you drop where they can find you at and the website and everything?
Yeah, probably the best place to just go to www.jeffjarman.tk. That's JEFFJARMAN.tk. I've got a lot of comedy YouTube skits on there, some gaming videos. We've done some horror game playthroughs and stuff like that, still adding content to that all the time. So, yeah, check out our stuff there, and I think that's about it for me.
All right, and of course, you can find The Fright Corner on Twitter at The Fright Corner. We have a Facebook page. I just don't do much on there. I can't seem to reach a lot of people on there compared to Twitter. And that's, YouTube, The Fright Corner. We've put up a few videos, some playthroughs, some demos, a few things like that. And that's just about it. So I guess till next time, keep horror alive and watch something that scares you. We'll see you right here in The Fright Corner.
The earth will be a better place without you and me.